Welcome back to another episode of People of Product. My name is George Brooks, and on today's episode, I had the pleasure to talk with Carmel Wynkoop. She's a partner at Armanino, which is a top 25 CPA and consulting firm. Now, she gets a chance to lead business analytics and automation practice, providing data-driven practice improvements in automation. She has more than 25 years of experience leading transformation projects across international clients in manufacturing, life science, construction, and healthcare. And she has a master's of science from University of San Francisco. I loved this conversation. We got a chance to really talk about the practicality and the opportunities that are going to come from artificial intelligence, machine learning. And I love the way that Armanino thinks about this idea that there are your employees, then there's your outsourced resources. So that might mean, around the world, global resources or outside your own organization. And then there's your digital workforce as well. And that's just an integrated workforce model that they've come up with. And I think it's a really smart way to look at not the threat that could be coming from AI, but instead the opportunity and where to start small, get those small wins that lead to creating that flywheel, that momentum that lets organizations see the potential of where artificial intelligence, machine learning, RPA, everything, where these new ways of thinking can take your organizations to the next level. I think you're really going to love this conversation. So let's jump right in. Welcome back to another episode of People of Product. I am so excited to have Carmel on the show with us today. Carmel, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Well, tell us a little bit more about you, Armanino, and the work that you are pursuing day to day.
Yeah, okay. I am a partner at Armanino. I've been here for about 10 years. I was in the ERP space for a long time, and I now run our business analytics and automation group. Armanino is a tax audit and consulting firm. And my role is in the consulting area, again, in business analytics and automation. So I primarily am focused on the Power Platform, AI, RPA. Maybe I should not do just acronyms, right? So,
well, I mean, yeah, let's, for those, I think that probably most of our listeners will be like, check. But
yeah,
just for those that might be learning, because we want to give people the ability to learn here.
Absolutely.
Give me the definition of those terms.
Sure. So artificial intelligence, having a machine do some stuff and do some learning. Machine learning is actually training machines to take over processes and learn from them as they go. RPA is robotic process automation. And so that is about having bots do what I call rote tasks in people's lives. And so here's the way I think of this, right? I think of this like the Roomba. Like if anybody has a Roomba, right? Roomba first came out and that was amazing because it would just vacuum your floor. And then it got smarter, and now it doesn't run over your dog poop. And now it's even smarter where you can actually tell it what rug and what room to go actually vacuum, right? So that's part of, it's a bot. It has machine learning in it, and it's also using some capabilities of AI because you can talk to it. So nice.
That's perfect.
Home use example.
Yeah, we can bring it down to what's reality. But I mean, a lot of what you're working on is doing this at scale or doing it with organizations that are thinking about deploying it through their workforce. I'm kind of curious. So, I mean, part of the reason we're talking about this right now is like, we can't ignore AI anymore, right? It has been around for some time, for a long time. We've got one of our employees is working on her kind of continual grad work in AI. And she's really brought me up to speed of like, yeah, we're talking about 1950s and 60s when the first concept of this was coming out.
Yeah.
But it is really definitely taken traction, in the kind of general vocabulary in the last 3 to 6 months because of ChatGPT and OpenAI, and really just the headlines that we're seeing of how fast things are moving forward. Tell me a little bit about how is your group responding to this right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would agree with the grad student person that you were talking about, right? This has been AI and these kind of concepts have been around for a long time. And if you look at Um, the Industrial Revolution and the evolution of that. We are now in the fifth Industrial Revolution, and things are moving faster than ever before. And I think what's interesting about it is large companies with big budgets have been able to afford AI, and so they're taking advantage of that today. And the smaller to mid-sized organizations feel like that's a really large investment. Their data is not clean enough, and they just don't think they're going to be able to do it, right? So my group and my focus at my job is to really start thinking about how do we get AI in some way, shape, or form? How do we get people to start dipping their toe into the water there? We don't have to do a $100 million project. Let's just do some small things that start allowing you to feel the impact, right? So
Yeah.
And getting you small wins where you're seeing productivity gains and moving people from repetitive tasks to more strategic type things for them to be thinking about. And so that's sort of the way that we're playing in this world of AI right now.
So tell me a little bit about what are the types of things that you're seeing are being automated. So I love that, how can we take things that we're doing this over and over and over again? We see this all the time.
Yeah.
And what are if someone is trying to think through, man, I really wish I could look for that first place to play or learn, or like you said, measure a potential value impact so I could sell it up to maybe do more in the future. But these are obvious areas where you could really be thinking about it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're doing this in a couple ways right now. One of them is we've got a couple clients that have a lot of bank reconciliations, right? And how do they do that? One organization is also people name their bots. Just a side note, one company named their bot Fabio, and the other one named it Daryl. And so we get funny requests from them. Can I have 4 more Daryls? Absolutely.
I love it.
So those are folks that are taking advantage of this, and so the bank reconciliation thing is basically they were getting a bunch of, I think they had 4 or 5 different banks where they were pulling in information. Somebody's having to do that reconciliation manually via a PDF type of form. So we're able to pull that information, scrape through the PDF, and then provide the reconciliation, and it will post for them if everything ties out, right? And then if it doesn't, it kicks out, okay, someone needs to go pay attention to this one. So if you think about tasks like that, right, that are fairly manual, fairly cumbersome. I've also got we're talking to another organization right now who their reporting tool is a legacy tool. They're not really ready to rip and replace it yet, which is fine. Totally understand that.
Yeah.
But it only spits out PDFs. And the poor controller there is spending 4 to 5 hours a month just reading through PDFs. So we have a process where we can, and this is a machine learning process actually, where they could send the PDFs into a specific mailbox. We'll go pick it up and run it through what I call a transformer. We're trying to coin that name at Armanino.
I like it.
ORM, big capital letters.
Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah.
I've also said if we make enough money on this, I will show up at our next consulting in a transformer costume. So we've got.
I think we're going to hold you to that.
Yeah, I mean, I put money on the line here. So, but anyway, you could run those PDFs through that tool, and when they first give us the reports, we'll send it to the tool. We'll train the tool, so they'll give us like 9 samples, right? Different data, but all the fields are the same. So it learns, and then it can run those forms through there all the time and spit them out in an Excel version and email them back to the client. So. Allows him to slice and dice that and or put it in a data warehouse if they want to get fancy, right? There's all kinds of things they can do with it now that it's outside of that PDF.
Well, what's good about that, I think what's interesting is you're talking about something where you don't have to have a massive data set yet. Right. And I think that, like you said, that, and granted, more data creates a smarter, model. But I think there's some value to say we can train this model off of a relatively small data set. You have to have enough variety for it to make meaning of the data that's looking at. But I think it's a great place to start.
Yeah. And right. Those are just small things. Okay. So now we've eliminated 5 hours a month for this person. Great. What else you got? Show me your next big problem that is a pain point for you.
It creates a flywheel. Yeah,
It
which is
does, right?
yeah,
Because then you start identifying, oh, well, if you can do that, can you do this? Yeah.
yeah.
Let's talk about what that process is. If you're doing it, if you've got screen clicks that you're taking or workflows that you're doing outside of the system, we can pretty much automate all of that and make it much easier for you to get things through.
Well, and I know that, I've looked at some of the material that you and the company have put out around this idea around we're having a massive change in our workforce in general,
Mhm.
right? Whether it is because you've got a huge group that is retiring
Mhm.
in the well, right now, literally as we're talking. Well, those that want to retire with the economy the way it is, but they're trying to, right? They're at that age where it's
Yeah,
time for that workforce to be moving on. But we're not seeing that workforce come up in the same way behind
right.
them. And so I think we're having to rethink how do things get done?
Yeah, I think we look at this in two factors. One, exactly what you're talking about, and then also looking at a pressurized economy right now where
Oh,
we need to do more with less, right? We're it's
oh yeah.
volatile, and
Yeah.
and we're trying to make profits and still keep a balance there, right? So I think, yeah, the whole concept of a digital workforce or an integrated workforce is kind
Yeah.
of what we're talking to our clients about. And, many clients of all sizes have done the outsourcing thing, right? They know how to do that. They feel comfortable with it. It's affordable.
Yep.
And there are resources to do that. Thinking about having digital workers to also help subsidize that and some of those tasks is the next place where people need to start thinking about. And if we're not thinking about that, we're not going to, it's going to be really hard for people to just do outsourcing and continue to compete
Yep.
because the digital worker can work 24/7. The outsourced worker can't do that. Neither can your internal workforce, right? And so there is an advantage to that for the things, and it doesn't mean every job or every task is applicable, but certainly there are a lot of repetitive tasks or rote tasks that we think about doing that with. And again, sort of to use the Roomba example, one of the things that we talk about with our clients that when they're scared about this is, you're using AI in your everyday life all the time now. Your
Yeah.
car probably has it. I
Yep.
had a really old Toyota 2002 up until this last year. And now my car has a backup camera. I didn't have that. I had a tape deck, right? So that was,
Oh, all right.
I
Yeah. That's
know,
a
it's
big
pretty
upgrade for you. Yeah. I'm excited.
yeah. And my car tells me stuff now, right? I have low tire pressure.
Yeah.
Uh, Clean my backup camera. It tells me everything. And so we're used to this in our personal lives. We've got Google that we talk to, Alexa that we talk to at home, right? It manages our TV and all of our electronics. We
Right.
want to do the same. We want to bring the same amount of convenience to your work that was brought into your home. As a matter of fact, I saw a refrigerator the other day that had a camera in it. And when I told, it was an Airbnb, and when I told the woman that was, whose house it was, I was visiting, she was like, "Are they taking pictures of me in the refrigerator?" I'm like, "No, that's for you to connect to. So when you're at the grocery store, you know what you need, right?"
Yeah.
So
It is. I mean, it's everywhere now. And I
yeah,
think that for a lot of folks, that haven't been noticing, it's just paying attention, right? If you haven't noticed that it's happening, now we're being forced to pay attention. We're forced to being seeing it all around us. And of course it's relevant because, the internet has decided to talk about it. And of course some key events have taken place recently. But I think that because of that, you have a really interesting moment where people are going, well, now I'm scared of it. Now I'm
right.
confused about it. Is it a threat? Is it going to take every job ever? Is it going to replace all of us instantly? Um, and I think that they're valid questions, they're valid concerns, but I think it misses the opportunity that it's going to provide for us too.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And sure, there's, when you think about things like Chat GPT and the ethical, sort of construct of that and how we need to be responsible in its use,
Yeah.
absolutely. But we need to be responsible about a lot of things, right? The environment, the Chat GPT use, all kinds of things like that. So this is just another one that we have to pay attention to. But I do think, and I get it. that, some people are nervous about this coming into their workforce. I don't think it replaces jobs. I think it takes jobs up a level, right?
Yeah.
So instead of, doing those rote tasks, you're now focused on the more strategic things that the bot can't do or the virtual
Right.
worker can't do, right? And so it allows you to expand what you're thinking about and what tasks you actually take on and make sense for you to do.
The way we've been kind of referring to it around here is, rather than thinking about like, oh, these things are going to replace us, they will enhance us or they'll
Right.
empower us, right? So it's the AI enhanced or the AI empowered designer. It's the
Yeah.
AI empowered product manager. It's the AI empowered, developer, or, the list goes on. It's if you view it as a tool, I mean, there's things that we do now. I take for example, using Figma as a design tool. The idea of not have, if I were to go back to using another tool that didn't allow me to have collaboration inside the software so that we could all open up the same file, look at the same file at the same time, on a shared, cloud-based experience, we would think that's crazy because it seems so natural now that that's how work gets done.
Yeah.
That collaboration's real time. And before, that would have been like, no. I remember people saying, I don't want to use Figma. My file is my file,
Right.
and that was a switch that felt like a threat.
Yeah. But it wasn't, right? It ended up being, it just made it from going from, this is going to take us 2 weeks to get to a final design, to this is going to take us 2 hours to get to a final design because
Yeah.
you're not passing the file around. It's the same thing. And, Microsoft announced their Copilot AI, OpenAI, this last week. It was on LinkedIn. And I think that name is actually really perfect and important. Copilot,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
think about it. It's your helper. So it can help you do things. You're still in control. You're still in control of editing those things. You're still in control of making final decisions. You're still in control of addressing the anomalies if you've got like an RPA tool that's running in the background that doesn't, and things don't match up perfectly, right? So
Yep.
it's exactly, it's your helper, your enhancer, and your co-pilot in your workspace, so that you can go do the things that thing can't do, right?
I was sharing this with Dan, my business partner, and we were talking about he loves Excel. And I know there's people out there that love Excel. I don't happen to be one of them. Okay. My background's in design. I love the people that do, and they are great. But I was trying to explain to him the potential of what you could be doing in Excel with this tool, right? If you could maybe give it a set of data or access to a set of data, and then give it instructions of what you want to do with that data. And it would run the pivot tables. It would run the calculations. It would go ahead and build out the resources to build the visualizations inside of Excel that actually are kind of annoyingly hard to do. That becomes just something where it's like, I just need to know how to be better at asking the right questions and prompting the right results that I'm looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
I think that's very exciting.
That's very exciting too. I love Excel, but I'm not an Excel whiz, right?
There are those that are much better at. That's not. I'll get in it when I have to. Okay, so tell me a little bit about where you see this going as we start to dream about the potential. Like you said, there's obviously these very tangible, right in front of us opportunities. But you already mentioned whether it's with robotics or automation or, this, I love that kind of digital or integrated workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see that going in the next, 3 to 5 years is the stereotypical timeframe? Well, it's hard to imagine 3 to 5 years with as fast as things are moving now, but maybe even the next 18 months.
Yeah, I think that's probably a more legitimate time frame as we think about how fast things are moving. I think it's going to change. It's interesting, right? So if I look at it from a consulting perspective, it's going to change the way that I consult for sure, right? Because now I have to start thinking about, so if you're going to use Copilot as an example for all the Excel things you just talked about, it has to connect to that data. So what are the connectors there? And how do we help you get those in place so that you have the accurate data that makes sense for that to be a useful tool, where today that sits in a data lake and maybe it's cleansed and maybe it's not, right? And then, also how do people start thinking about their data and data governance, right? And what does that look like? And how do we help you get that in place? And again, those are things that large companies with big budgets typically have in place. Change control methodologies and a strategy around data governance, right? But it doesn't have to be overwhelming like that. We can start with, okay, let's get a clean set of data. Let's understand what that set is, and then let's move to the next clean set of data and understand what that is. And if there are areas that need to get cleansed, let's just go identify them, and we can make those changes over time. It doesn't have to be a big bang project, but it does need to be, if you're going to use something like Copilot, just as an example, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the area that you're going to use it first, and let's go make sure we understand what that data set looks like and what those connectors are. And so that changes a little bit. I also think that right now we are seeing more and more people interested in RPA and that type of automation, the digital worker, right? Because of, all the things we talked about previously, earlier in this conversation. Less people entering the workforce, more people leaving the workforce, and a tough economy. And how do we compete in those conditions? And this is a quick, relatively quick way to get some quick wins and boost the morale of the employees that you do have right now, right? And have them move them up a little bit and have them focus on things that you want them to focus on, but you can't right now because otherwise the bread and butter stuff falls to the ground, right? Which can't have that.
Right. Right.
You need AP,
and so many
you need
organizations
AR.
are struggling to even make that be profitable. So it's going like, I have to make adjustments here, which
Right.
means that we're now in this like upside down scenario. I was
Yeah.
thinking about, been following the development of Rivian trucks, right?
Oh yeah.
And Rivian's done some incredible work, obviously, within the they're a 10-year-old company, but they've really only released their product in the last 2 years. And, one of the challenges they have in front of them is they have automated a lot of their product on top of putting AI in their trucks so that it can self-drive and everything else that Tesla's been doing for a while. But they're struggling at the same time. They have to do even more of that because their stock is so low, because the market isn't, so how do you respond to the times using the technology that's in front of you? I think this is a real opportunity, hopefully, if taken advantage of in the right way. But they've had to figure that out very quickly.
Yeah, agreed. And again, it's kind of why we're focusing on, let's go find the one thing that we can get your toe dipped into, and then we can figure out what is the next thing, and then you can build upon it, right? So agreed, when you have something like a new car that's completely electric and is competing with Tesla.
Oh my gosh, it's in another scale. Yeah, right.
They got to do it all. But the manufacturing plant or the dental, branch or whatever. Let's start with smaller things there, right? And let's make some of those things just easier for you.
Well, and I think that's a huge opportunity for organizations like yourself around being the service provider to support those groups, because we used to work. So, for example, we used to work a lot with cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. And we found there was kind of a sweet spot of, like you said, the big firms. I remember talking to the CISO at Capital One. And at the time, this is several years ago, but at the time, they had the largest security group in the world. And it was like hundreds, if not thousands, of just security professionals at one organization in-house, right? And that was super rare, but they were such a large organization. They were doing such, relatively risky work that they had to invest in that way.
Yeah.
Now, then there was the outflow of the rest of us that need to be thinking about these things, but don't have the resources, the scale, or the ability to do that. And I think that's where a service provider can really come alongside and say, let us help you. This doesn't have to be scary. This is something, there's opportunities here, which I think is really exciting about what you all are working on.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we are trying to make it not scary, right? Don't get overwhelmed. Just let's we don't have to boil the ocean. Let's just one cup at a time.
It's a really good way to say it. Okay. So what is one thing, if we look at it from the opposite way? So whenever I'm going down a path of a topic or an idea, and especially AI is, we're all thinking about the potential. What are some ways that when you're either having those early conversations, or even you've been working with some folks on this for a period of time, what are some areas where they get it wrong? And I mean that in the sense of like, where do they hit challenges where they go, this is the thing I keep beating my head against the wall going, I just don't feel like we're getting past this. Is there a consistent place where you see people struggling to either wrap their head around it or take advantage of it in the best ways? Just to flip it on its head a little bit, where are areas that people are challenged by?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, right? And I will give you a two-part answer. So last year, when I took this group over, I went around my firm, tax and audit people, and I was telling them about AI and RPA and the Power Platform and Power BI and data warehouses. And all of those people looked at me like I had three heads, right? Not hitting the mark there at all. So part of it is the conversation. Uh, Went back, changed my talk track this year, talking about outcomes now. Let's talk about what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And then let's see how we can get you there. And so I think that talk track and the way and it's not just a talk track, right? It's a holistic approach to how we then go solve these problems. So I no longer walk into those meetings or any client prospect meeting talking about technology, talking about let's talk about the outcome you're trying to achieve. And then we have tools like the mural boards and things like that we use to map out, okay, let's map out the actual process. And then we can say, all right, these are the 10 things we can automate. Where would you like to start? Right?
Yeah.
Or this whole line, we can automate 5 things in here that will help you. And that's one dip your toe sort of thing, right? I think where people get overwhelmed is when we try and do too much, too fast, right? Let's get you some ROI. Let's talk about outcomes. Let's tackle the process that's going to give you some bang for your buck. Doesn't always have to be the biggest bang for your buck. Sometimes it's okay to start small, right? And so let's do that. And then we can follow it up with, all right, what's the next thing you want to tackle and what is that outcome? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go have that discussion. And the important piece of that is really the process mapping of, okay, what does a process look like today? And what can we eliminate in there with either, a digital worker, or if you're doing like a workflow where you're emailing something around, maybe it's Power Automate, whatever those things are, right? But let's go identify those things. And then we'll have then we start talking about the technology and what it can do for you. But don't start with the technology, right? Let's think about what the outcome is.
Such good advice. And that is something, oh my goodness. That's not a new idea. That's just applying the idea to this moment, right? Because we talk often, oh gosh, the amount of times that we got asked to build a tool, but also replace all the features of Salesforce at the same time, right? And it was always like, do you realize that's no value? Like, we will take so long and so much money to rebuild Salesforce that we don't, it's not necessary. And it's an integrated platform. We can pull that in, we can use it, or we can use another CRM or another, database tool, whatever. But in their mind, it was, well, I have to do everything that everything else is doing. It has to be feature parity. That then you bite off more than you can chew. And then you're disappointed when you don't see progress.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah. I think the other thing is when we're trying to recreate something that already exists, just stop, drop, and roll there too, right? And to your point, we're not going to reinvent Salesforce or an ERP system or whatever, right? But then it becomes, okay, how do we? That's nice that you want it to be the same, but what if it was better, right? Mm-hmm. So then let's talk. I think the still process mapping makes a whole lot of sense to go, okay, but this is where you're doing these manual steps, even utilizing the tool sets that you have today. So there can be automation opportunities there as well, whether they're, again, digital workers, bots, AI, machine learning, Power Automate, Power App, don't care.
So good. So good. Well, honestly, I'm excited about the way you're approaching it. I love the fact that you kind of changed the narrative from being about technology to being about how the human impact, right? The business impact. This is how this will help you, not how this is a threat because it's a terrifying robot, artificial intelligence that's coming for your kids or something. It's something. Make it approachable and understandable, and then those small wins to get the momentum, I think, is very, very powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay. Well, I want to give you the kind of red carpet to tell the folks a little bit more about where they can learn about you, your organization, and how to get in touch with you to maybe learn more about doing this with you.
Yeah, fantastic. Certainly you can look me up on LinkedIn, Carmel Wynkoop, Wynkoop. And Armanino.com is the website for Armanino. And there's plenty of, you can look up my name and the Find People. Certainly there's plenty of content on that site that you can search for, but all of those places I can be found.
Awesome. And honestly, I've had such a pleasure to get to know you and some of the folks on your team. Just incredible people. Like immediately you're just like, let's do something great together. So I love that language, and definitely check out Carmel and Armanino to learn more. And Carmel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. This was great. And yeah, George, we love working with you and your team as well. So excited to do more.
Awesome. Thanks.
People of Product is brought to you by Crema, a digital product agency. We believe creativity, technology, and culture can help individuals and organizations thrive. Learn more at crema.us.